Hello everybody, good morning, welcome to the United Stands. I'm Mark Goldbridge and this is your latest Manchester United news, and some quite significant news coming out this morning as Manchester United face a potential European ban under Sir Jim Radcliffe, which surprises me and raises a lot of questions. So we'll get into the source of this, because this is coming in from a UEFA source that Manchester United will face a European ban if certain things happen with Sir Jim Radcliffe's acquisition of partial ownership of Manchester United. So we'll talk about that. We'll also talk about a very interesting article coming out from Rob Dawson, which pits Erik ten Hag against Sir Jim Radcliffe in what will be a head-to-head round one. Who's going to win that? We'll talk about what that means and what we can expect from the first few months of Sir Jim Radcliffe in charge. We welcome Luke Shaw back to the training ground. We saw pictures of him yesterday. We'd heard that he was going to be back, but it's fantastic he's going to be back. We're also going to talk about this Andre from Fluminense, who may be going to Fulham. A lot of people feel that Man United should be looking at that in January for £30 million. And injury updates on everybody now that we're heading back towards the Premier League. Rasmus is apparently a doubt for the weekend. We'll talk about that as well. So lots to get into on the show this morning. An exciting news show with lots to get our teeth into and lots of input, hopefully, from you, because there's some opinionated topics in here. Make sure you smash a like, as always. But let's hit this story, which I didn't expect to wake up to today. I was on the radio this morning and they asked me about it, and I was sort of caught unawares that if Manchester United qualify for the Champions League and Nice qualify for the Champions League, one of them will not be allowed to play in the Champions League. And apparently this is set out in UEFA rules, and there is no avoiding it for Manchester United. My answer to that this morning, without doing the research, was, well, look, we don't know the detail of this takeover yet, so we can't really comment on if, buts and maybes. But there is absolutely no doubt that there is a very strong scenario where Manchester United qualify for the Europa League or the Champions League and are not allowed to play in it because Nice are in it. So we'll talk about that, of course, and we'll delve into the whys and wonders of that, which to me would be, I don't know what you describe this as, because when Qatar was buying us, the press never shut up about this PSG Man United link, even though the Qatari bid did a lot of work to say we're not linked to PSG. And the press never shut up about it. They never shut up about it at all. And yet nobody really focused on the fact that Sir Jim Radcliffe actually owns Nice and is buying part of Man United. Like, that's factual. But it was always about the Qatari link to PSG, which they sort of said wasn't there. But factually, there is one with Manchester United, Sir Jim and Nice. So this is what the UEFA source is saying. Let me get this out so people can get their heads around it, because it takes a little bit of time. And people will quite rightly start shouting about RB Leipzig and RB Salzburg, who have played in the same league. But you're wrong. You're wrong about that. That's not going to be an excuse, and I'll explain why that's not an excuse. This is what has been said by a UEFA source. This has come out in The Sun today, but it's in numerous other outlets. Sir Jim Radcliffe's ownership of Nice could see United banned from playing in Europe next season. Under UEFA's multi-club ownership rules, the only way United and Nice can both play in Europe is if, in the next campaign, is if one seals an automatic Champions League spot and the other qualifies directly for the Conference League. What about the Europa League? We'll tell you about that. If both finish in the Champions League spots in their respective divisions, the team that finishes higher of the two gets the place with the other banned from Europe. Incredible, incredible. And this is what a UEFA source has said. As the rules stand, it's a clear situation. Ineos own Nice and are set to have a significant role in running Manchester United. Unless the regulations are changed or Ineos sell one of their stakes, they cannot both play in European competitions, unless one is in the Champions League and the other is in the Conference League. Wow, that's quite a big statement. If Red Bull can get around it, so can United, says Rory C. Well, you're wrong, but I'll explain why that is in a moment. But let's give clarity to the United situation. As things stand, Nice, I think, are either first or second in the French league. If Man United finish third and Nice finish second, we are out of the Champions League and the Europa League under these rules. For the simple reason, it's who finishes higher in their respective leagues if there's dual ownership. So if Man United finish second, but Nice win the league in France, Nice go into the Champions League and Manchester United go into the Conference League under these rules that people are talking about. Why can't we go in the Europa League? Because if Nice are in the Champions League and finish third in their group and drop into the Europa League, hello Manchester United, which can't happen. So it's a scenario where, at the moment, under these rules, if Nice finish above us, even if we finish in a Champions League spot, if they finish higher than us, we're in the Conference League. We're not even in the Europa League. So if Nice finish, I think in the French League, if you finish third in the French League, you go into a playoff where you could end up in the Europa League. If we finish sixth for a Europa League spot and they go in the Europa League, they finished higher in their league, so we go down into the Conference League. It's not a crazy situation. It's a dangerous situation because not being in the Champions League is going to cost United 50 million quid. So is there a loophole around this? You would suspect there is a loophole because I don't understand why Manchester United would risk that amount of money going out of the football club. Imagine the scenario where Nice win the French League or come second and United get fourth and we have to go into the Conference League because of Sir Jim. Now, there's a lot of question marks around Sir Jim working with the Glazers anyway. He doesn't want we're in the Conference League when we should be in the Champions League because you own two football clubs. But this has come from UEFA. This is what the rules are, and we have to accept that this is a story that technically does have legs. I have my doubts about how this will work, but for those people who are saying, well, what about Leipzig and you're absolutely right. What about Leipzig? What about Salzburg? They're both owned by RB. This is an article from February this year. Manchester United links to new Qatari owners have raised concerns that the club could have issues playing in Europe. Effectively, UEFA rules state that clubs cannot hold shares or have management control in another club taking part in a UEFA competition, nor can individuals and legal entities have ownership or management control over more than one club. So what about Leipzig and Salzburg, who are owned by the same company, both playing in Europe despite their connections? Well, in 2017, UEFA's club finance investigators noticed an unusually high level of players and loans transfers between the two teams. Some of these transfers from Salzburg to Leipzig included Sesko, Keita, Sabitzer, Upamecano and Szoboszlai. They also highlighted the common visual identity, similar branding, which nods at similar badges and kits. However, Salzburg chose to remove members of staff that were allegedly linked to Red Bull, and their cooperation deal with Leipzig was ended with the sponsorship scaled back. Once all these changes were made, UEFA then accepted that there was insufficient evidence that the clubs had a shared ownership and they were both allowed to compete in Europe. However, things may end up being more difficult for other teams following similar paths, with UEFA speaking strongly on multi-club ownership in its annual financial study from 2022. They said the rise of multi-club investment has the potential to pose a material threat to the integrity of European club competitions, with a growing risk of seeing two clubs with the same owner or investor facing each other on the pitch. So therefore, this doesn't look particularly good for Manchester United, and you cannot use the Leipzig and Salzburg argument because it was investigated by UEFA and they found no sufficient evidence. Obviously, it's very different with Man United and Nice because Sir Jim Radcliffe and Ineos own Nice and they're about to buy 25% of Manchester United. It's going to be one to keep a watching brief on because ultimately, if we do not, many of you will be saying we won't even be in the Champions League anyway. It's not just the Champions League. It's the Europa League as well. We can't go into the Europa League if Nice are in the Champions League. We're in the Conference League next year. Under these rules, it's worrying. So what do we need to happen? We need Nice to drop out of the top four, basically. We need Nice to finish lower than us. That's what my interpretation of this, if it's going to... Look, we can get very technical, can't we? But having read it, looked over stuff, done some research on the Leipzig situation, as I said... Basically, Man United need to finish higher in the league, in the Premier League, than Nice finish in their league, which isn't necessarily easy because Nice are doing well in a league that's not as good as the Premier League. It's a concern. Is Sir Jim Radcliffe going to sell Nice? That's what needs to happen. I don't know. But this to me is another example of we don't have the detail. People are saying Jim's going to own all of Man United. We don't know that. Some people are saying he's going to sell Nice. We don't know that. This could be a concern because it's not just this season. Imagine if Nice keep finishing above Man United in relation to their position in the French league. We won't be allowed to play in the Champions League and the Europa League. It's weird. It's really weird. And I didn't expect to be talking about it this morning, but from everything I've read and all the research I've done, we're going to have to wait to see what the detail is into Jim Radcliffe's acquisition of Manchester United, because UEFA are going to be looking at this. And as I say, Nice are doing very, very well at the moment. If Nice finish above us, they will get into the Champions League, and we won't even be able to play in the Europa League. We'll be in the Conference League. Mark, do you believe Sir Jim Radcliffe knew about this before doing the deal with United? Seems very stupid from a business sense, if true. Interested what you think, says Alex. Well, there's got to be a loophole. There's got to be a loophole. Ash, Harsh, thank you very much for joining the members club. There's got to be a loophole. And I'm sure there will be a loophole, but everybody this morning is reporting it, and everything I've seen suggests that this is a concern. And I completely agree with the people in the chat. I don't think we'll qualify for the Champions League anyway, but we won't be allowed even in the Europa League. We'll be in the bloody Conference League. So, yeah. UEFA are going to meet in the summer to discuss this rule because of many teams having multi-club ownership, says Drexel. Yeah, well, they'll have to change the rules, won't they? And Mark, aren't Girona part of the City Group and Pep's brother is the chairman? What happens if Girona qualify for the Champions League, says Callum? Well, if Man City win the league and Girona finish second in La Liga, Girona will have to go in the Conference League. They won't be allowed in the Champions League because Man City have finished higher. Same rules. Is there any news of United and the winter window? And do you really think the Premier League will relegate Man City and Chelsea, looking at the revenue they bring in, says Harsh? Well, it's a Manchester United show, mate, so I'm not going to talk about Man City and Chelsea. In relation to the transfer window in January, we'll talk about that in a minute because there is this Andre player as well. Andre says the loophole is that it's minority investment, not sole ownership. You're wrong. You didn't listen to what I just read from the article. You're not right. So you might want to go and do some research. It's partial ownership as well. You're not allowed to do it. Glazers never had any intention to sell the club, says Lisa. The Rats have always wanted investment only. And Mark, did you see Eric Ten Hag's interview, says Sent? Yeah, I'm going to talk about that a little bit in a moment. I think it's been taken out of context a little bit, but I will talk about that. And Jim has to sell Nice no matter what. Man United comes first, says Sata. Look, if he sells Nice, we'll be fine. If he doesn't sell Nice, there's a problem unless the rules change. It's an interesting one. It's certainly an interesting one. I really do think Sir Jim Radcliffe will be revolutionary for United. If we had to get Qatar, we would have become too greedy, says Tamiz. And Girona never played Champions League or European, says Emmanuel. And I can't believe people don't know what conflict of interest is, says Royden. And Girona and Man City are owned by the City Group, says Ash. I know. What are we getting at here? Are you trying to move away from the story? Like, if Girona and Man City, they face the same problem. They can't play in the same European competition. Girona will never get to play in the Champions League or the Europa League if Man City keep winning the league. If they finish above Man City, i.e. first, and Man City finish second, then Man City can't play in Europe themselves. These are the rules. Probably need to change the rules. Rules probably will get changed, but the rules are the rules. As things stand now, there is a real risk that Man United will be playing in the Conference League next year, no matter where they finish, if they finish lower than Nice finish in the French League. But you know what? I actually stand with UEFA on this, and it's a funny one as to why I do, because sporting integrity is in doubt here. They've got to change the rules, or they've got to do something about it. Because imagine what Sir Jim Radcliffe will do to Nice if these rules get held up. He's basically always going to be looking at where Man United are and making sure that if Nice are third with 5 games to go and Man United are fourth, watch Nice lose a few games to let United finish higher. So you can understand why UEFA do it, but multi-club ownership's not a good thing, is it, really? Because you've got this situation that UEFA are obviously concerned about, which is sporting integrity. If you own Man City and you own Girona, and Girona are second and Man City are third, you better do something about it, because you don't want Girona in the Champions League and Man United in the Conference, Man City in the Conference League. And it's the same with Nice and Man United. You're going to be looking at it and going, yeah, Nice need to lose a few games here because Man United need to be finishing higher. What if they both win the league, says Robert. Great point. Final point on this. If they both finish second, if Nice finish second, or if Nice finish third and Man United finish third, or if they both win the league, the team that goes into the Champions League will be Manchester United, because the English league has a better, what do they call it? I forget the word, it's gone. Accreditation's not the word. We've got a better reputation in England, in Europe. We've got a better success in Europe. So we would go coefficient. We've got a better coefficient score. So we would go in. If they finish second and we finish second, we go in because the English league has got a better thing than that. So look, a watching brief, an interesting story. We will wait and see what happens, but the rules are the rules, and it's something to certainly keep your mind on. Do I think it's the Goldbridge opinion? Do I think it's going to be a problem for us? Somehow, I think there's a loophole or a rule change coming. I do not see a scenario where we're in the Conference League, even though we qualify for the Champions League because Nice have finished above us. But technically, as things stand at the moment, we would be. And as I say, it's not. I don't think we qualify for the Champions League this year, but we will qualify for the Europa League. And if Nice qualify for the Champions League and we're in the Europa League, we're not. We're in the Conference League because Nice could drop down in the Europa League where we are. So they won't let us in the Europa League either. We'll be in the Conference League, which is just, I don't want to be in that. I don't want to be in that. Anyway, let's move on. Maybe we come back to that, but hopefully that explains it all. One club is owned by Sir Jim and another is owned by Ineos, says Andy Mack. You're not listening. You're not bloody listening, are you? Go back to the start of the show where I spoke about Leipzig and Salzburg. We're not going to get away with that. Sir Jim Radcliffe owns Ineos. We're not going to get away with, I own this, Ineos own that. That's not going to work. The UEFA aren't bloody stupid, and we don't want to be stupid about this. That's not going to be the way we get around it. They'll have to change the rules, I think. You ain't listening, Andy. You're not listening. Let him speak, Simon. Let him speak. Anyway, feeling a lot better this morning. Thank you, everybody, for your support yesterday. The finger's still in agony, but I think basically I took the painkillers on an empty stomach, and it just made me feel absolutely terrible last night. But I feel a lot better today. And we've got a preview tonight at 8 o'clock for the Everton game, and football's properly back. So thank you, everybody, for your support, and love that. Right, let's move on to the second part. There's a lot to get into on the show. I just want to talk about the weekend very, very quickly. Man United play Everton on Sunday. We've got Galatasaray on Wednesday, and then the following Saturday we've got Newcastle, and the following Wednesday we've got Chelsea. It's a hell of a run of games. It's going to be difficult. Eric Ten Hag was speaking about the upcoming games, and obviously quite bullish, quite on the front foot. You would expect that, but I feel that with regards to what's about to happen with Manchester United, I think he's trying to push off on the front foot and be a little bit more confident about things. It was interesting what he had to say, and I've got to say I took it out of context firstly myself with regards to what he first said, but I think that it's fair to say that what he actually meant was that the group in general, because he basically came out with comments around he wants to work with this group, and I think so. It's about consistency, and I think some people were like, "Oh my God, he's going to keep picking Maguire and McTominay and Reguilon and all these players." But actually, I think what he was talking about is that he wants to get players back as well. So this was the direct quote. He said, "Before we start this busy schedule, I think we're building and acquiring confidence and also developing automatisms. We hope now that we can stay more or less with the same group, because I think what's been a problem for us so far is every time we've had to make changes." Now, some people have panicked about that and said, "Oh my God, he's just going to keep picking Eriksen as the holding midfielder." Well, he can't because he's injured. He's going to keep putting McTominay as the number 10 and Bruno as the 8. He's going to play Maguire and Lindelof at centre-back, and he's just going to do that for the next month, and we're going to lose a load of games. I don't think that's what he's talking about. Although, actually, can I just say, what else is he supposed to do? Luke Shaw's coming back. Luke Shaw comes straight into the team. You can't play Eriksen at holding midfield anymore. I think what he's more talking about is getting a group of players fit that he can use without any more injuries or any more suspensions. I think that's what he's talking about. So, look, I'm not going to dress this up. I'm not going to put any lipstick on it. I'm not going to, perfume it up or whatever like that. The reality is we've got a very, very, very difficult set of games coming up where I'm absolutely confident we will lose some. I'm absolutely confident of that, just because I'm realistic. Everton away, Galatasaray away, Newcastle away, don't do that finger, Chelsea at home, Bournemouth at home, Liverpool away, West Ham away, Aston Villa at home. That's 9 games that takes us up to Boxing Day. We're not going to win 8, and we're not going to be unbeaten in those 8. We will lose games. That is a reality. How many we lose is going to be very, very interesting. But we've got a massive week. I'm nervous, excited about it, and I think what Ten Hag's talking about is about building on those results before the international break, and trying to get a bit of consistency in a team that's just not been very consistent. Gift says, I don't see which one we will win. Well, we'll get into that tonight because I want to do the preview, etc. on that. But Rasmus is apparently a doubt for the game against Everton, which in a way, I'd rather not play him if he's not fully fit, because Anthony Martial, whether you like it or not, actually traditionally used to do quite well against Everton at Goodison Park. I'm pretty sure Martial at Goodison Park used to always have a good game. So look, maybe Martial, it's not like we're going to play Wout Weghorst, is it? So look, I think we'll be okay. But you can't be playing players when they're injured, and maybe Rasmus is a risk to play on Sunday. What I do want to talk about is, and somebody just said goodbye Ten Hag, says Metal. Look, I was asked this question this morning. You're my you are my obsession, but you're my priority. So I'm not going to answer a question on another platform and not give you it. I was asked today, do I think Ten Hag is under any danger? And I said, I don't think he should be. As Manchester United manager, there's no point in replacing him at the moment because I don't want Darren Fletcher and Steve McLaren doing the job. And if we're going to replace Ten Hag, let's take our time about it and do it in the summer. So there's a strategic and long-term vision to the replacement. However, I don't want him to go. However, we're Manchester United. You look at the run of fixtures we've got before Christmas, and it could be a problem if he. The Liverpool away game worries me. The next 3 games worry me. Look, imagine if he loses at Everton, draws at Galatasaray, loses at Newcastle, draws to Chelsea, beats Bournemouth, loses to Liverpool, loses to West Ham. I mean, that's a bad run, and we've not even lost them all. So we're going to have to just get on it game by game and hope that we can perform. And I'm not taking anything for granted. And I'm not taking anything for granted at all. I was on Talk Sport this morning, and Agbonlahor was like, are you going to apologise for giving Harry Maguire a load of stick? And I said, well, you obviously don't watch the United Stand, because over the last few weeks he's been getting man of the matches and getting a lot of praise. But I'm not apologising for anything because I don't need to. And first of all, the criticism was valid based on his performances up until the last few weeks where he's done well. But I ain't sitting here and saying he's back, mates, because I think we're going into very dangerous territory to start talking about United being back. We're in a, that's the worst thing we can do. The best thing we've done recently is people have been shutting up and just doing their job and getting on with their job and letting their footballing performance do their talking. We've got this amazing stupidity at this football club where we start saying we're back because we beat some run-of-the-mill teams, and then we walk into an embarrassment. We're not back. We're not back if we beat Everton. We're not back if we beat Galatasaray. We're not back if we beat Newcastle. We've still got to go to bloody Anfield. That Anfield game is the one that concerns me, because whatever we do before it, that's the game we'll be judged on. Even if we beat Everton, Galatasaray, Newcastle, Chelsea, Bournemouth, when we go to Anfield, that's the game we're going to get judged on because of what happened last year. And we could win our next 5 games 6-0. But if we get beat badly at Anfield, everyone will forget about it. That's the game for me. That's the one where we look at it and go, are we turning a corner? And I think we all know that. I think we all know that, don't we? Anyway, let me talk to you about this. Interesting article with Rob Dawson in the ESPN yesterday. There's a lot of detail in it, which I probably will skim over. But one of the big things, there was 2 things that sort of jumped out at me. And one of them was this. Great, I enjoyed the whole article, but there was some things in it that I just thought, we've got to bring this into the show. 2 things. First of all, Ten Hag's veto on transfers, which I think is very interesting. And then secondly, what Nice have done with Sir Jim there and the amount of changes they've made. Can we learn anything from what he's going to do at Manchester United? So I'll summarise these very succinctly so that you can just take them in and grab your thoughts and opinions. But Basically, Ten Hag has been granted a lot of power since his appointment in 2022, according to sources, and he won't give it up easily. The Dutch manager was given a number of guarantees following his arrival from Ajax, notably that he would have a veto on all transfer decisions, and he expects that to be honoured whether the Glazers or Sir Jim are calling the shots. There is an argument that part of United's problem with recruitment over the past 10 years is they've signed players for the manager and not as part of any long-term plan. But Ten Hag is opinionated and headstrong, and Sir Jim Radcliffe and Sir David Brailsford will find it hard to strip him of the influence he's enjoyed in the first 18 months. Sir Jim is a fan of Ten Hag, and despite a poor start to the season, believes he's got credit in the bank after winning the Carabao Cup and qualifying for the Champions League in his first year. But a lot will depend on whether they can develop a smooth working relationship that is acceptable to both sides. So basically, this has been discussed a lot, as we know, that Sir Jim Radcliffe is going to come in with people and want to revolutionise the footballing side and gain control. Erik Ten Hag, when he got the job, was given control of transfers in relation to veto. So what does that mean? It means that if I'm John Murtagh and I say I want to go and buy, let me think of a player that would be, I want to go and buy Rabiot, and Ten Hag says no, then you don't do it because Ten Hag says no. Now, under the new regime, they might be, we're not going to work like that anymore. And that's a bit of a battle, isn't it? So, look, we'll have to keep an eye on that. I don't know which way it's going to go. Personally, if I was Ten Hag, I would welcome a really good director of football that you work with together. And if I'm being honest, I think the ultimate power has to be with the director of football, because I think people get a little bit lost on the managers buying the players. That's not true. I think what's happened at United is that the manager has a big say in what signings are signed. But I think you need a sporting director to actually overrule them sometimes. You're always buying players for the manager because you want the team to play the way the manager it wants to play. But you need a sporting director that will say no at times. And I always use the David De Gea example, because if I was the sporting director, I'd have said, wait a year and I'll do that deal. I'm not doing it this summer. And I think that is where you need a sporting director to say, I agree with having a ball-playing goalkeeper, but just not this summer. It's a year too soon. Let's keep David. Let's keep stability for another year. Let's focus on building a defence that can actually play out from the back. And then next summer, we'll bring a ball-playing goalkeeper in. But we didn't. We went headstrong. Let's do this now. I want to do this now. And United followed him. And I think that's a mistake. So I think Sir Jim Radcliffe, when he does come in, has got to take some of the power away from Ten Hag to run us like other clubs are run, whereby Ten Hag wants players and is involved, but ultimately the sporting director can say no, and that needs to be removed, because that's how a big football club works. So that'll be a very interesting thing to resolve, and it could be a potential issue, because Ten Hag's going to be told you're not having the veto on transfers anymore. We are, and how does he adapt to that, or do they let him still have it? So that would be a very interesting thing. The second thing I wanted to discuss was the first few months, what Sir Jim Radcliffe basically did at Nice. So this is just a broad stroke summary, but this is what has happened since he's been at the club. There's been some interesting choices since Sir Jim Radcliffe took over. I'm quoting this from the Rob Dawson article. Despite living just half an hour away in Monaco, he's not been a daily hands-on influence of Nice, nor does he attend many games. First of all, he named his brother Bob as the CEO straight away, only to fire him 2 years later. When he left, Sir David Brailsford came in and ran things in his stead while doing an audit of the club. Brailsford hired Ian Moody as an unofficial sporting director, which led to some of the worst signings of the Radcliffe tenure at Nice. The three men bought defenders like Sorensen, Vitti and Bryan, Schmeichel, Barkley. All had experience in other top leagues, but each struggled to acclimatise to the pace of the league as well as the nature of the Nice project. He's not scared, Sir Jim Radcliffe, of overseeing a proper overhaul of a squad, something he may need to do at Manchester. During his 4 seasons at Nice, 50 players joined and 40 have left. I mean, that's a massive. In 4 seasons, 50 came in and 40 left. That's not a revolution. That's a bloody cull. That's massive. Net spend was minus 130 million euros, but that doesn't matter because that's a Nice budget. These kinds of changes have met with negativity too in September 2022. So last year, club captain Dante even complained about the constant and numerous changes in the squad. So that's been seen as a problem as well. He's also shown little hesitation in making coaching changes. And his record has been a bit mixed. Vieira, who was already manager at the club when Ineos took over, lasted 18 months under Sir Jim. Favre, who had guided Nice to a third-place finish back in 2017, made it just 6 months before being sacked in his second spell at the club. Urcia and Digard, who both did an interim job for 6 months, were not retained, while Gaultier, who led Lille to a remarkable League One title in 2016, left after 1 season. Farioli has been in charge since the summer, and he is doing well. So, yeah, just a very interesting article there. Certainly the Ten Hag bit caught my eye the most, but there's been a lot of change at Nice. There's been a lot of incomings, there's been a lot of outgoings, there's been a lot of coaches, there's been a lot of interims. They're doing very, very well at the moment, but there has been a hell of a lot of change. And this is just why I sit here and go, reality is Glazer, Sir Jim, ownership of Man United. And we've got to get our head around it. And I'm waiting to see. But excitement and optimism, based around what? Until we get evidence and proof, why are people getting excited about this? Because there's plenty of reasons to be concerned. I just think we need the detail. We need the detail. The Nice project has been very, very intensive. Lots of managers, huge amount of incomings and outgoings. They are doing very well at the moment. Can you do that at Man United? Can you sell 40 players and buy 50 players? Can you keep sacking managers and having interims? It's going to have to be a very different job, isn't it? It's going to be very interesting. And we know the Glazers aren't going to be any good. We know that. Thanks for your super chat, John. We have to give Erik Ten Hag a chance. Please bear in mind he has come into a very unsettled inner and around the club, says Lisa, and it's going to be very unsettled over the future weeks and months as well, Lisa. I'm also, Mark, do you think a Sancho and Chiesa swap would be massive for us, says Tamis? I mean, I like Chiesa, but it's got to be a deal that works for us as well as them, hasn't it? Nightmare scenario, says Sean. If Sir Jim signs away his ownership of Nice to someone else, someone he's connected to but UEFA couldn't prove it, then technically Sir Jim won't be involved in Nice. And did you see... I don't know what that's all about, Kibu. No, I don't know what that's all about. Sorry, can't comment on it. And I'd love Chiesa, says Matthias. And... it's not been nice at Nice. Thank you very much. And if he's working in the UK, Sir Jim should pay tax. Okay. And PSG and Braga played in the Champions League this season, says Ricky. And let's hope that Sir Jim has learned from Nice because we don't want such a learning curve with us, says George. Yeah, I think there's been a massive... I think that's a great point by George. There has been a massive... George Kyle, sorry. There's been a massive learning curve for Sir Jim at Nice. And... we can't afford that at Manchester United. It's got to work, and it's got to work very, very quickly because we're so far behind, and it's a lot of work to do at Manchester United. I want to talk a little bit about the situation with the January transfer window. I know a lot of people are interested in it, and there's one player I just want to throw out there that I don't actually know a lot about this player, but apparently he's going to sign for Fulham. He's a midfielder, and his name is Andre. Now, Fulham are about to buy him for about 30 million quid. Manchester United and Liverpool were interested in signing him, but apparently Liverpool are now out, and Manchester United are just doing a watching brief. Now, look, it's only November the 23rd. Even in a month, the January transfer window hasn't happened. So I think it's probably a player just worth keeping an eye on. Metal says he's a good player. I don't know a lot about him. Plays for Fluminense. Apparently he's a really talented midfielder. I haven't even started looking at him yet. I'm not at that stage. I'd be interested if anybody who does know anything about him in the chat just wants to give us a little bit of insight. I would suspect, without knowing anything about him, that he's probably more of a combative midfielder who is probably Fulham's replacement for Palina. Remember, Man United were potentially providing Fulham with a replacement in Scott McTominay, but that deal didn't happen. Anthony says he's a good DM and he's competent at 8. Daniel says he's a fantastic player who played very well in the Copa Liga, a strong midfielder on the ball who carries it well. And he's very similar to Enzo Fernandez or Bruno Guimaraes as key to success. So look, straight away you can see, without even watching him, which is my situation and probably most of yours, the type of player he is the type of player we need. Whether it's we need it now or whether it's we need it in 6 months' time, we have got an amazing lack of players who can do this Palina, Casemiro, Bruno Guimaraes sort of role. We don't have many players. You look at Chelsea next week, they've got bloody loads. Conor Gallagher, Enzo Fernandez, Caicedo, they bought Lavia as well. They've got an abundance of these midfielder types that we don't have any apart from Casemiro. So we do need to be bringing in a player like this. I would just say keep an eye on it because we keep being mentioned and it's almost like, it feels to me like, I mean, we're not in transfer zone, but you know when it's the summer and I say there's always 5 factors to a transfer. In fact, there's more, but just either the player wants a new contract at the club are trying to sell the player, the agent is trying to sell the player, Man United are genuinely interested, or it's complete bullshit. There's always loads of strands to a story, and this to me just feels like there's a deal for Fulham to do, and Fulham are looking to do it, but they're trying to get Man United interested, or we are interested, or we're not interested. So we'll have to wait and see. But for 30 million quid, I mean, Robert McCormack says, I watched him play against Argentina and he'd done nothing, to be honest. Well, at least he's playing for Brazil, Robert. I didn't even know he was playing for Brazil. So, you know, that's a start. He's an international. But for 30 million quid, but I sort of agree with Robert as well. You can't just go, he looks good, let's buy him. This is the whole problem we've got. We've got to scout well. We've got to bring the right type of player in. Wouldn't surprise me if he goes to Fulham and ends up being a bloody good player. But we've got to be looking at these sort of deals. And one of the positives at the moment is that most teams in the Premier League that are competitive are quite well stacked in the midfield. Even if you look at Spurs, they've got a lot of options in that midfield area with Sarr, Basuma, Skip, Højbjerg. Chelsea, as I've said, have got loads. Man City have got an abundance as well, although they probably will be looking to bring in somebody with Calvin Phillips going at some point. Liverpool have redone their midfield. Arsenal have got a lot of options in there as well. So we really should be looking, and if we do look, we might find some real value for money signings in that area, but they've got to be the right sort of players. But I would keep an eye on it because when you do this long enough, and I'm sure you're all the same, you start to pick up on themes. And although we're not in for Andre, and he's probably gonna go to Fulham, our name just keeps getting mentioned a lot around this. And I just wonder, sometimes there's no smoke without fire, and I'm just wondering if this is something that could develop, because I don't see, going back to the original question at the start, winter transfer window, do you see anything happening? The only one that's logical is Todibo, and we might need to take him to make Nice drop down the league from what we were talking about. But Todibo may not be a deal we do until the summer. So when you're looking in January, you probably are looking at a player who's playing in Brazil like that, who can come in, because it's very difficult to do a deal in January for a top player. And that might be the sort of January deal that you can do for a reasonable price that makes an instant impact. So, maybe keep an eye on it. Maybe keep an eye on that one. A lot of people talking about Fred. Well, I don't know what went wrong with Fred. I think Fred could be at the club. Look, McTominay's still doing a job. Maguire's still doing a job. Lindelof's doing a job. So of course Fred could still be here doing a job. We can't, you can't say he couldn't still be doing a job. But I think Fred got to the point where something happened after the March international break. He just couldn't get in the team anymore. And I think there was a fallout or something, because up until the March international break last year, Fred was actually playing. I mean, remember Fred at home to Spurs about a year ago? He's bloody brilliant. So I don't know what went wrong with Fred in that international break, but he basically got froze out. And then he was gone in the summer. And I think Fred wanted to play games, but there was definitely a fallout. Something happened, and that's a recurring theme, isn't it? That there is a recurring theme with players that seem to be in favour suddenly not being in favour. I mean, look, we've got it with Varane at the moment, so I don't know. I think ultimately Fred leaving the club was the right thing to do, and we needed a few more to go in the summer. Could we have done him with him this season? Yeah, but in hindsight, we also, if we'd have kept Fred, McTominay, we'd have been sat there in the summer going, bloody hell, what's going on? So I think it's one of those hindsight ones that, of course, I think Fred could be a useful option now, but as part of the regeneration and improvements at Manchester United, then we definitely do need to be moving it on. Pap says Eric Ten Hag's the common denominator. Just keep keep happening. We need to get down to the bottom of it, Mark, says Krish. And Fred has about 5 good games in total. Bless him, says James. And well, look, we're going to preview the Everton game later, but what I will say is there needs to be a huge improvement from Man United. We're coming back from this international break, and there's no rehearsals. Goodison Park on Sunday is going to be absolutely, really hostile, because they're going to be so pissed off that they've had that points deduction. There's going to be protests and all sorts. It's going to be a really, really hostile environment for Manchester United, and that might work in our favour. It might work against us. Galatasaray is going to be very hostile. Newcastle on the Saturday night after that is going to be very hostile. We've got 3 really tough games, and then when you get through all that and you think, oh, we've finally got a game at Old Trafford, it's going to be Chelsea, who've got a very, very good midfield. So we've got 4 real battles ahead of us. And if we don't hit the ground running, we'll get knocked out. We'll get knocked out. Simple as that. And there are a lot of players where there are question marks. I mean, 2 that jump to mind straight away are Rashford and Anthony. They've got to be delivering next week. We can't have 3 more average performances. They've got to deliver next week. And there's a lot of players in that situation as well. And all this talk of tiredness bollocks, that cannot be in the mindset going into these games. We've got to hit the ground running against Everton and maintain that momentum, because there's nowhere to hide now, actually. When you look at the amount of games we've got to play between now and probably next March, to be honest, but certainly New Year, I don't think we've got a full week off, really. I think there is trying to think. So we've got midweek next week. We've got midweek the week after that. We've got midweek the week after that with Bayern. I think midweek after that between, what would it be? Chelsea, Bournemouth, Bayern, Liverpool. I think we've got a week off between Liverpool and West Ham, but and then you're into the Christmas period. No Rasmus, is it time for S9? Says Robert McCormack. What, Scott McTominay? Might do. Might happen. Who knows? Gabrielle says we've got 9,300 watching. Let's hit 1,000 likes. Yes, please do smash a like on the video. And James Garner would have been a good 8 for us, says Oladelli. Yeah, maybe. I wouldn't put McTominay up front. I'd put Martial up front, in my opinion. But we can talk about that tonight. Thanks everyone for watching. Really enjoyed the show. Very interesting show in the sense of that European stuff. I do get the feeling that there's a loophole or something there, but you can't argue with the fact that the rules are the rules, and UEFA have sort of reiterated them. So I can't see how. Maybe there's just always an assumption that it won't be a problem because United will finish higher in their league than Nice will finish in the French league, but it's a problem, and we're going to need a little bit more clarity. We need clarity on a lot of things. I'm not particularly concerned about this story because we haven't even got the clarity of what Sir Jim's ownership of Man United is yet. So we'll wait and see how it works out. Don't forget as well, I mentioned it last night, Christmas show, December the 11th, the night before the Bayern game. We're in Manchester. It's the United Stand end of year Christmas show. Can't wait to see you. Loads of guests involved. We've got Santa giving out presents to you as well. It's going to be very interactive. And as I said last night, at the end of the show, if you want to grab a picture with any of us, we'll have a system in place where you can do that as well, which we did at Manchester last time, and it worked really well. So looking forward to seeing you, hopefully grabbing a drink with you as well. Links in the video description, and it's in the live chat, and you can just put your camera phone up there and get your tickets while they're there. It's going to be a fantastic night. Can't beat a bit of a Christmas show, can you? I think we deserve it after the year we've got, and we've got lots planned for you on that as well. Thanks everyone for watching. I'll speak to you all soon.